One of the primary objections I have is that the classes only teach one religious sect, Christianity, and from one holy book, the Holy Bible. We can't expect a school district to carve out release time for all of the religions wanting the same accommodation to indoctrinate their children, because eventually you'd have all of the children at a school not being in school at some point during the day because they're off getting religious instruction.
This is Glass City Humanist, a show about humanism, humanist values, by a humanist. Here is your host, Douglas Berger.
In this episode, we look at the use of release time religious instruction in some Northwest Ohio public schools, and why the mixing of religion and the schools might be legal, but it is at best unethical. We also share an update about the Secular Humanists of Western Lake Erie and this podcast.
Glass City Humanist is an outreach project of the Secular Humanists of Western Lake Erie, building community through compassion and reason for a better tomorrow.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Glass City Humanists. My name is Doug, and I am your host. And before we get into the meat of today's episode, I wanted to make a couple of announcements concerning our group, Secular Humanists of Western Lake Erie, and the podcast. The Secular Humanists of Western Lake Erie, we have tentatively started meeting in person again. We had a meeting in March. We have another meeting coming up in April the 19th. We're going to have an in-person speaker, and it's going to be at the Sanger Branch Library on Central Avenue, starting at 7 o'clock in the Community Room A. And our speaker will be Bruce Gurenser. He is an atheist living in rural Northwest Ohio, which is odd in itself, as you know, coming from this area. And he spent 25 years as a Baptist minister at various churches around the country. And in 2005, he left the ministry. And in 2008, he became an atheist. And so he has a website called The Life and Times of Bruce Gurenser, which I like it. I've read quite a bit of it. My thing is about my interest is his stories about seeding churches. I appreciate those stories. So he'll come and talk to us and talk about his journey to free thought and what it was like to be a Baptist minister and supporting the patriarchal society that a lot of these small Baptist churches feed into. So that's going to be a good time. So, join us for that. We know that some people are still cautious because of the pandemic, and we totally understand. Unfortunately, I've tried several times to live stream our meetings when we have met in person, and because of either technical issues or terms of service issues with some of the platforms, we have not been able to do it. For example, YouTube, I wanted to use YouTube, and in order to use my mobile phone to live stream our meeting, we would have to have 50 subscribers on our YouTube channel. We have 26. And even though we're a nonprofit and we're registered with Google and all that stuff, which I think is ridiculous. I understand the rule. I just think it's ridiculous that it applies to nonprofits like ours. And now I could take my laptop in and set up a webcam and live stream, but I can't do it from a mobile phone. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, so hopefully I'm going to record it, and the meeting will be available probably a week or two later on our YouTube channel. The announcement that I wanted to make about the podcast. Several episodes ago, probably 5 or 6, 8 episodes, maybe we're in 38, probably starting with 32 or 33. I made the change to go with a video first recording style. And what that meant was I have a little green screen here at my desk and a webcam, and I have OBS recording software, and I would do the podcast as a video. Then I would edit the video and then strip the sound out to do the audio part that I send out to the various podcast catchers like Apple Podcasts, Google, and Spotify, etc. Then I would take the video and put graphics in it and jazz it up, and then put it behind a paywall on our Ko-fi page, our donation page, as an incentive for people to donate money to the podcast. Then I would release it to the public then later so that you could watch it on YouTube. Well, I am making another change. I am not going to do, let me backtrack. I'm not going to do what I have been doing in regards to the video part of the podcast. Mainly because it's been hard to get guests to come on and talk. I would like to have a guest. I would like to speak to a guest every single episode. And we've done it in spurts, like in the fall, summer and fall last year, we had 4 or 5 people in a row, which was great. Because I happened to attend the AHA convention that year and asked people. And I'm going to do that again this year too at the convention. And that worked out well, but I haven't been able to get a steady stream, and I want to have at least 2 episodes a month. And so, I'm limited in getting people to come on the show. I've sent out emails to various people that I want to talk to. And so, it's an open invitation. If you're listening to this podcast and you're a humanist or an atheist and you think that you are an expert in some area, a topic or such, go to our website, glasscityhumanist.show, and send me an email, with the contact form with your pitch, and I'll get back to you. But anyway, so because I'm not getting every episode a guest, most of the videos have just been me talking in front of a green screen. I don't want to do that. I think it's boring. Even putting graphics up, I think it's still boring to me. I'm sure it's boring to video people. It's a difference between my ugly mug and a static image. It's the same excitement level. And so what the change I'm making, the tweak I'm making to the process is, and also trying to edit these videos and put up graphics and make it jazzy and make it look professional is a lot of work. It takes several hours to put these videos together. And so what the change that I'm making is that if I do not have a guest, I will not do a video with me talking in front of a green screen, just me. If I don't have a guest, it'll be a static image and some graphics, because I come up with graphics to do the show art and things like that. I'll put that up. I'll put up the music, and I'll still put it up on YouTube. So that will not be an incentive for people to donate. So I'm going to do away with that part of it and try to come up with something else. But I'm not going to, if there's no guest, I will not be on camera by myself. Okay. And so that way then it helps me, it helps me do what I want to do and get more content out to you so we can talk about humanism. So the points, let me reiterate the points. If you want to be a guest on this show, if you think you have something interesting to say, or you know somebody who has something interesting to say that you think might be a good guest, send me, go to our website, fill out a contact form, and we'll talk about it. Second is that we're still doing video for the YouTube channel, but if I don't have a guest, I won't be on the video. It'll be a static image with I have a background that runs for 60 minutes, free background, so it's going to be visually okay. It's just not, it's going to be less work for me to do. Okay. So hopefully that'll make less work for me, allow me to generate more content, and so you can enjoy more episodes of Glass City Humanists.
Do you like what you hear? Would you like to support the show so we can make it better? You can write a review for podcast apps that allow reviews. You can share our website, glasscityhumanist.show, with your friends, and you can donate to the show using the donate link on the website. Any support is appreciated.
Recently, I became aware of a local school near where I live, Elwood Local Schools in Wood County, have decided to institute a release time religious instruction period for elementary students starting, I believe it's going to be starting next school year. And it would use what's called release time. And release time was allowed in a couple of U.S. Supreme Court cases back in the 40s and 50s. So it's McCollum v. Board of Education, 1948, and Zorak v. Clausen, 1952. And what that meant was that school districts would allow students to leave school in order to receive religious instruction. Or when I was a kid, people used release time on Ash Wednesday to go to the local Catholic church and get the ashes put on their forehead, and then they would come back. And basically, this is time that a student can go free time ahead of time. They have to say, hey, I'm going to leave that day, to take care of whatever religious thing that they wanted to do, either go to mass or religious instruction. It hasn't been used as often, but I've been noticing a trend of this being used. And what it is that these court cases set up these guidelines so that this release time religious instruction didn't violate the First Amendment. First of all, religion classes must be voluntary. Parents are required to give permission for their children to attend, and it's written permission. The class can't be held on school grounds. Now, classes can be held after school in a school building, but that's a different legal issue. So these religion instruction classes can't be held on school grounds. The class can't be taught by school employees. So you can't have Miss Mavis, your English teacher, teaching you about creation science in this release time class. And then finally, no tax funds can be spent on the classes at all. And the way that it's been working out, the programs that I'm aware of now are volunteer committees, and they raise money, private donations. And it can cost anywhere from $15 to $300 per student to do these classes, depending on the area and what other regulations that they have to abide by. My group, Secular Humanists of Western Lake Erie, we acknowledge that release time religious instruction is legal, but we object to it, and I object to it personally, on the principle of religious freedom that this country is supposed to stand for. There have been plenty of ideas in the past that were once legal in this country. They passed Supreme Court muster that are no longer legal and no longer allowed, like segregation and not allowing women to own property. So I believe that any religious instruction should be left to the parents and their religion completely outside the school day. I don't believe that there should be this religious class that kids go to in the middle of the day. One of the primary objections I have is that the classes only teach one religious sect, Christianity, and from one holy book, the Holy Bible. Now, we can't expect a school district to carve out release time for all of the religions wanting the same accommodation to indoctrinate their children. Because eventually you'd have all of the children at a school not being in school at some point during the day because they're off getting religious instruction. And again, while release time is legal, it becomes unfair because it doesn't accommodate any religion besides Christianity. Good luck if you're Muslim in a school district like, let's say, Elwood, and you try to have release time for teaching for classes in Islam. Good luck trying to have that. I just think that it's too subjective, approval or disapproval. That's why it shouldn't be involved in the school districts at all. Also, this release time religious instruction that favors Christianity only supports the point of view of Christianity or whatever Christianity that they want to teach. And a lot of those points of view are opposite of what public schools should be doing in the first place. The vendor that is providing the curriculum to Elwood is called Lifeways Academy. And they have some sample material that they have available on their website. And one of them was a drawing. It was saying, I think it was called Find the Creation Scenes. And it was like one of those mazes with you connect the different areas with try to do it. Anyway, it was like a puzzle. But I don't think that it is, it might be technically legal, but it's unethical to be teaching a kid about creation during the school day when they're going to go back to school and learn about evolution, which is the real and actual science that they need to be learning. And so the reason why the courts that are so strict about religion in public schools is because a school is seen as an agent of the state, and laws that require attendance could be used to coerce a child. The claim that these classes are voluntary doesn't address the real outcome if little Susie or Timmy isn't allowed to attend. These children could be ostracized or bullied for noncompliance by other children. And we've seen examples of this. It's perfectly okay, perfectly legal not to say the Pledge of Allegiance. But we've had cases in the news where kids have been sent out of the room and punished for not saying the pledge. We've had them bullied by other kids because they didn't say the pledge. And I know when I was a kid, we had sex education classes that were highly regulated in much the same way these religious instruction times are classes. In that you had to have a written permission slip from a parent. And if the parents wouldn't allow you to attend, you had to leave the room and go to study hall. And we had 2 kids in my particular class, who were friends of mine. They were brothers, and their parents were very, very extremely religious. And they would not let them attend participate in the class. So they had to go to study hall. And kids made fun of them. They bullied them because they weren't allowed to participate. And that's what kids do. So just because it's voluntary doesn't mean that somebody's not going to do it simply to belong. And that's another reason why there's a court case before the court right now about a football coach in Washington State praying with his players. And that's why it's wrong for a coach to do that. He's claiming that it's voluntary, that the kids don't have to do it, but you have the football coach, somebody who puts you on a bench saying, hey, let's pray. You're going to pray because you want to play. The same with these religion classes. Some of these kids are going to go to these classes and it's not even their religion. They're going to go because they don't want to feel left out. And what happens if Timmy and Susie beg their parents to allow them to attend because all our friends are doing it, and a low information parent signs off because their kids begged them? None of that is voluntary. Not at all. I think that any release time religious instruction should start, if it's going to be done, it should start with a meeting, an in-person meeting between interested parents, the school district, and the curriculum supplier, instead of just sending out a trivial letter with a form. That way, then there's decision making that's done based on the information, so you can ask questions and get information that way, instead of just getting a random letter and not understanding what it means and not being able to ask questions. I also object to the notion that children can only learn character values in a religious setting. That's one of the big selling points of this curriculum, is it teaches character values. That's the whole reason. That's the mask that they use to bring in the religion, is they want to teach good character skills to students. Try to modify their behavior. Try to make the school a safe place. And they think it's done through religion, but that's just wrong. In the example materials provided by the vendor, Lifeways, being used to set up the classes, it shows some example cards that are titled with general character values that everybody knows what they are: gratitude, respect, responsibility, etc. Then they're illustrated with what looks like Bible story artwork. Now, character values should be part of a school curriculum, but they should be applicable to people in a general sense, and not be made to seem like they only exist when supported by religion. Because again, gratitude, responsibility, respect, those are all important character traits that don't require religion to exist. One of the first things that I learned in school was to share my toys. That's not, and it wasn't like, Doug, you need to share your toys or you're going to hell. That was never the conversation. It's just, some people learn these things. And again, there are plenty of secular or non-sectarian examples of character traits being taught and being learned in children's and young adult literature. That's pretty much their bread and butter. I mean, that's pretty much one of the themes of many of these books, like the Judy Blume books and Encyclopedia Brown and other children's literature, young adult literature. And so in the Lifeways materials that I looked at, the Bible stories are just window dressing to install religion during a school day. That's all it is. The vendor also makes some dubious statistical claims about their program, about their curriculum. In an effort to make it look like that the program is actually good for children, they trot out the old tropes that religious belief makes one happier, makes one less likely to do drugs, and at release time, religious instruction can narrow the achievement gap by 50%. The achievement gap is one of those things that parents lament. It's one of the driving ideas that they're trying to make school go all year. All year you would go to school. You would go to school in like 4 or 5 or 6 week blocks and keep going, because they believe that children, young children especially, kind of backtrack when they're not in that structured environment continually. And so Lifeways claims that these religion classes would continue that structure and reduce that achievement gap by 50%. I don't buy it, because they only meet 1 day a week for an hour. Children don't lose what they've learned in 1 hour. If that were the case, then there would be no study halls or recesses. It would be learn, learn, learn all day long, with only a break for lunch. And I don't know about you, but I believe that children need to take breaks during a school day to relieve stress or boredom, or to blow off some steam. Educational experts have decried for years the removal of phys ed, art, and music classes because schools have been forced to teach to a test. They don't have the time or the resources to do phys ed, art, and music classes anymore because they have to get these kids to pass these tests that is used to show progress. Rather than showing that a kid is a productive citizen in his community, they have to have numbers and quantitative numbers. And so the arts and crafts and music and phys ed get left to the side because that doesn't help with the numbers. And I think that's completely wrong. And so I think giving up not a study hall for little kids, but giving up a free time or library period to attend religious instruction, I don't think that's going to help. I mean, they trotted out some studies in their materials. They had some links to some studies, but it wasn't specifically about release time instructional periods, about religious instruction. It was about religious belief in general. And so I think I would like to see some actual studies about the particular curriculum. And then finally, the other concern that I had about this release time religious instruction was that, at least in this specific example of Elwood School District, that somebody that was on the volunteer committee setting up the classes was appointed to the school board that then voted to adopt the curriculum. That's kind of like he claimed that he was going to step aside from the volunteer committee since he was on the school board now, but he still voted for it. And that to me shows conflict of interest. So here in Elwood, they were estimating it was probably going to cost $45,000 to put these classes on. So they have until the fall to get it together. They're going to meet in a community room that happens to be an old school building. I think it was an old gymnasium, if I'm remembering Elwood correctly. That it's a community center next to the school. So the kids will walk. Lifeways claims that they have liability insurance. They also require that people that are involved with the classes be vetted and have background checks, which, okay. So that's why it's going to cost about $45,000, because they don't have to transport the students. They don't have to put them in a bus or a van. So just to reiterate my point here is that, this is a concern. In the article that I read, there are several, at least a handful of school districts in Northwest Ohio that have this Lifeways Academy during their school day. And again, even though it's legal, I just don't think it violates the spirit of the First Amendment. I really do. I think it violates the spirit. But of course, even though it's legal, it's going to happen. So basically what I think that people should do is they should, people, especially if you have children in public schools and this comes around, watch what goes on very carefully. Make sure that they are following the guidelines. It's voluntary and they're not pressuring kids to go. If you feel that your children have been pressured, or of children that are being pressured to go, contact either Americans United for separation of church and state, or the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and contact them and report it. Because that's the only way that they're going to take a look at this and try to make sure that the school is conforming. And also ask questions. Call the principal, ask them specifically about these programs. If your children are being pressured or feel like you're being pressured, and make sure that they're not overly promoting it during the school day, and just make sure that they follow the guidelines and the law. and keep an eye out in your local area. Hey everyone, this is your host Doug. I just wanted to jump in here briefly before we move on to let you know that I goofed in the just completed segment about the release time religious education curriculum being adopted in Elwood schools. Throughout the segment, I mentioned the vendor of the curriculum as Lifeways Academy. That is incorrect. The correct name is LifeWise Academy. And I just did not want to record the whole entire segment again. And so I did not catch that mistake until I went to edit the episode. And I do regret the error. And it should be correct in the transcripts, and I will add a note to the show notes. Take care.
Thank you for listening. For information about the topics in this episode, please visit the episode page at glasscityhumanist.show. Glass City Humanist is an outreach of the secular humanists of Western Lake Erie and is supported in part by a grant by the American Humanist Association. The AHA can be reached at americanhumanist.org. Sholi can be reached at humanistswle.org. Glass City Humanist is hosted, written, and produced by Douglas Berger, and he is solely responsible for the content. Our theme music is Glass City Jam, composed using the Amplify Studio. See you next time.